Hello, everyone. We're back again with continuing education. I'm Minister James Moss, and we are in the book of Acts, chapter 25. All right. And we're going from verses 1 through 22. This one is entitled, Paul Appears Before Festus. All right. So let's roll. When Felix was replaced by Porcius Festus, the Jews once again made their case against Paul. During this trial before the new governor, Festus, Paul, using his rights as a Roman citizen, asked for and received the promise of a hearing before Caesar. This legal decision thwarted the final action of Paul's Jewish enemies. All right, so here we go, verses 1 through 22 of chapter 25. Now, when Festus was come into the province after 3 days, he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief of the Jews informed him against Paul and besought him, and desired favor against him that he would send for him to Jerusalem, laying wait in the way to kill him. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself would depart shortly thither. Let them therefore, said he, which among you are able, go down with me and accuse this man, if there be any wickedness in him. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down unto Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about, and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. While he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple nor yet against Caesar, have I offended anything at all. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, Wilt thou go up to Jerusalem, and there be judged of these things before me? Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. For if I be an offender, or have committed anything wrong worthy of death, I refuse not to die. But if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, no man may deliver me unto them. I appeal unto Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, Hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar thou shalt go. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came unto Caesarea to salute Festus. And when they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, There is a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him. To whom I answered, It is not the manner of the Romans to deliver any man to die before that he which is accused have the accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him. Therefore, when they were come hither without any delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought forth, against whom when the accuser stood up, they brought none accusations of such things as I supposed, but had certain questions against him of their own superstition, and of one Jesus which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem and there be judged of these matters. But when Paul had appealed to be reserved unto the hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said unto Festus, I would also hear the man myself tomorrow. Said he, Thou shalt hear him. All right, so Agrippa is like, okay, well, I'll do it. I'll sit here and listen to what he's got to say. All right, so here we go. Verses 1 through 22. Verses 1 and 2 in the commentary. Here we go. The new emperor Festus wasted no time. After just 3 days on the job, he went to Jerusalem. Festus was procurator or governor of Judea. You know, I'm going to start saying governor. The governor. All right. AD 58 to 62. Little is known about Festus, though most of it is favorable, particularly in contrast with Felix, whom he succeeded. In Jerusalem, the Jewish leaders met with him and made their accusations against Paul. God had allowed his most effective instrument for Gentile evangelism and church planting to sit in custody for 2 years, the apparent victim of Roman bureaucracy. But this was not God's perspective. The gospel would not be stopped simply by imprisoning Paul. Most likely, Paul was leading those around him to Christ, even in his chained condition. Wow. Verse 3. Although 2 years had passed, the Jewish leaders were still looking for a way to kill Paul. The plot had expanded from the original 40 plus leaders to all the Jewish leaders. They tried to convince Festus to transfer Paul to Jerusalem so they could prepare an ambush. And the ruthless Jews had obviously abandoned all hope of a conviction of Paul by the Romans, so they decided to take matters into their own hands. This request was likely a clever political move, and we can only imagine how these politically savvy Jewish leaders tried to explain how such a favor early on in Festus's administration would do wonders for their working relationship in the future. Verses 4 and 5. By God's intervention, Festus decided to leave Paul in Caesarea. The trial would not be moved, so Festus informed the Jewish leadership that those in authority could return with him. In Caesarea, in his courtroom, they would be allowed to make their accusations. All right, verses 6 and 7. After a few days, Festus returned to Caesarea, where on the very next day, the case of this Roman citizen, alleged troublemaker for the Jews, began again. As before, the Jewish leaders from Jerusalem gathered around and made many serious accusations they couldn't prove, probably all the same baseless accusations from 2 years prior. Paul succinctly denied all the charges that had just been blasted at him again. He applied his denial to three main areas of accusation: the Jewish laws, the temple, and the Roman government. Verses 9 through 11. Only about 2 weeks into this new procuratorship, Festus wanted to get off to a politically healthy start with the people he was governing. The Jews were known as a difficult people to govern, and many Roman political careers had been dashed at this Judean outpost. It is not surprising that Festus would wish to please the Jews. Catering to what he knew they desperately wanted, he asked Paul if he would be willing to go to Jerusalem to stand trial before him there. Festus knew that the Jews had no case against Paul, but either he wasn't willing to aggravate and enrage them further, or he simply didn't know how to investigate such religious matters. Whatever Festus's motives behind this offer to switch the location of the trial, it became irrelevant at Paul's next words: "I appeal to Caesar." Every Roman citizen had the right to appeal to Caesar. This didn't mean that Caesar himself would hear the case, but that the citizen's case would be tried by the highest courts in the empire. It is much like appealing to the Supreme Court. This right of appeal to the emperor provided Roman citizens protection in capital offense trials carried out by local judges in the provinces. It was normal for a Roman judge to set up a group of advisors in a case. Festus might have postponed or proposed to have members of the council serve. Thus, there would be no fair trial in Jerusalem. Paul insisted on a court made up of jury of all. Paul basically appealed, or he insisted on a court made up of a jury of all Roman citizens. He appealed to Emperor Nero, who in AD 60 had not yet started the persecution of Christians. To go to Rome as a prisoner was better than to not go there at all. Verse 12. Festus probably felt enormous relief at having a way out of this difficult situation. Paul's request led Festus into a conference with his advisors, giving what seems to be a quick reply: "To Caesar you shall go." Humanly speaking, it is probably better that it happened this way. If Festus had ruled on the case, he likely would have set Paul free to make his own way back to Antioch or on to Rome. The bloodthirsty group of Jewish leaders would have done their best to make sure that Paul didn't live to see another day. Instead, Paul would have an armed guard all the way to his next preaching stop. Though he would have a few more audiences with whom to share the gospel between there and Rome, few were more prestigious than the one he was about to meet. Verses 13 through 15. King Agrippa was Herod Agrippa II's son, and was Herod Agrippa II, son of Herod Agrippa I, and a descendant of Herod the Great. Why do they even word it like this? It's just okay. So Herod Agrippa II, He's the son of Agrippa the First, which is the grandson of Herod the Great. Okay. All right. Yeah, it'll register there. So. All right. The last of the Herod dynasty that ruled parts of Palestine from 40 BC to 100 AD. Like great-grandfather, like grandfather, like father, like son, Agrippa inherited the effects of generations of powerful men with flawed personalities. Each son followed his father in weaknesses, mistakes, and missed opportunities. Each generation had a confrontation with God, and each failed to realize the importance of his decision. At this time, Agrippa II was a young man of about 33. He ruled the territories north of Palestine, bearing the title of king. With power over the temple, he controlled the temple treasury and could appoint and remove the high priest. Bernice was his sister. When she was 13, she had married her uncle, Herod Chalcis, who died in 48 AD. Then she became a mistress to her brother, Agrippa II, in AD 63. She married King Polemon of Cilicia, but in the early 70s. She became mistress to Emperor Vespasian's son, Titus. Here, Agrippa and Bernice were making an official visit to Festus to pay their respects. Agrippa and Festus were anxious to cooperate in governing their neighboring territories. The relationship between the Herodian dynasty and the Roman governors had always been sticky. This state visit was an extended one, giving Festus an opportunity to discuss Paul's case with the king. Agrippa, of Jewish descent, could help clarify Paul's case for the Roman governor. Verses 16 and 17. Festus described the details of the case with some embellishment. He included at the outset, for example, a statement about how he quickly pointed out to the Jewish leaders that Roman law does not convict people without a trial, and how the accused are given an opportunity to face their accusers and defend themselves. Festus was accurate, however, when he reported that he saw the case the very next day after the arrival of the Jewish leaders. Okay, the accusers and defend themselves. Festus was accurate, however, when he reported that he saw the case the very next day after the arrival of the Jewish leaders. And that doesn't make sense. Festus was accurate, however, when he reported that he saw the case the very next day after the arrival of the Jewish leaders. That is written weird, okay? And I'm trying to make sense of it, but all right. So basically, the Jewish leaders are the ones who would have Agrippa's attention or his interest. All right, verses 18 through 22. Quickly reviewing the facts, Festus explained that he had expected a different set of accusations. He did not anticipate that it would concern something about their religion and someone called Jesus who died, but whom Paul was insisting was alive. Festus admitted that he didn't know how to conduct an investigation. Particularly confusing seems to have been the part about the dead man being allegedly alive. But because Paul had appealed to the emperor, so he was kept in custody until arrangements could be made to get him to Rome. Festus's quick review of the facts had its desired effect or result. Agrippa wanted to hear the man himself. Paul's audience with Agrippa was set for the following day. It would be a golden opportunity for all those present, Festus, Agrippa, Bernice, the royal entourage, the high-ranking officials, to hear more from this ex-Pharisee about the dead man named Jesus, who he claimed had come back to life. All right. Part of this was, I guess it was in writing or interpretation. I don't know. Just the way it was written was kind of weird. But go back, read the scripture, listen to the commentary. And except for that part, like I said, where it was just written kind of weird, I'm still looking at it and I'm like, okay, Festus was accurate. However, when he reported that he saw the case the very next day after the arrival of the Jewish leaders, that's an incomplete sentence. Okay, we're not going to get hung up on that, okay? All right, so we know that next Paul is to stand before even more people, royalty, government, powerful people. All right, so until next time, God bless you. God keep you. And hey, pray for me because I am nowhere perfect. As you can see from the way I read, sometimes it look like I might, or it sound like I might have had a shot or two. Yeah, he's on. No, I don't drink. Not anymore. All right. So God bless you. God keep you. Remember always to keep studying. Okay? Keep studying. God bless you.